Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sonia Liebendorfer here. Wanted to talk to you today about non-TTR familial amyloidosis. Now, this is a very rare type because it does not form TTR. And most of the familial type that we talked about formed TTR. So these are 60 different strains that they have identified so far in the research that are not because of TTR. However, for whatever reason, they cause genetic mutations. So we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to go into the different areas in the genes that change, but I'm not really going to get into the nitty-gritty on that. I just want to focus on the high points of it. So let's get started. All right, so as we talked about in the ATTR, this has to do with genetics. This has to do with gene mutations that are passed down through families. And remember, we said that some people are carriers and therefore they don't have any symptoms themselves, but they pass it along to family members and offspring that they have. There are also people that present with symptoms, but they're not very severe. And then there are other gene mutations that cause multi-organ system involvement. Now, there are two basic variations that we've seen the most mutations with in the research. And one is the apolipoprotein A1, of which there is 22 known variations, and the A1 fibrogenin A for alpha, which there's 14 variations. Now, there's multiple different types of genetic mutations that they're learning the more research that they do. But they just really haven't focused on the non-TTR as much because there is not as much of a prevalence as there is with the ATTR familial amyloidosis. The main reason that I want to focus on the fibrinogen and the lipoprotein A1, these two are the most problematic for people in the United States and Europe. These are the ones that are passed down through the families that cause the most problems, especially with kidney problems, and people end up with kidney failure. So I want to make sure that we focus on those particular two because they're the ones that they found the most strains on. All right, now just like in the ATTR amyloidosis, family members can have involvement with the kidneys, with the heart, with the liver, or with peripheral neuropathy. If they start having problems with carpal tunnel, that is like one of the first signs that there is an issue going on. But unlike ATTR, some familial mutations can involve the brain, specifically cerebral hemorrhages, strokes. This can play a factor in it. Problems with the eye, problems with the larynx or the voice box. These are all different mutations that can come from this familial type. So we're going to go into that more a little bit. I don't want to get too involved because I don't want to overwhelm you with information. All right, now as we talked about before, because this goes down the line genetically through the family, there are those that will simply be carriers of the gene mutation, but they will not have any symptoms of any form of this type of amyloidosis at all. And then there will be others that are just going to have a few minor health issues, but nothing really major. And then there are those that have multi-system involvement. So We really never know how it's going to present in someone until the symptoms start to rear themselves. Now, the only way that somebody who is a carrier is going to know they have it is if somebody else in the family had the genetic testing to determine that there is amyloidosis. People can have it and not know it. Now, just like with ATTR, the symptoms that people have, the prognosis, all depends on how much of the tissues and organs have been affected by these amyloid deposits that build up and affect their function. Now, fortunately, just like with the ATTR, serious complications are not encountered by everyone who has a non-TTR type. And this is because, again, we have people that are carriers that never have any symptoms at all, but yet they still pass on that defective gene to any children that they have. May, not necessarily all, but may. It's like a 50% chance in offspring that they're going to get this or not and have symptoms with it. Now, the other thing that we need to go into is the diagnosis and the treatment for this type. Now, just like in the ATTR, we talked about how they did a protein test in their urine to see if they're spilling extra protein. That's a telltale sign. And then if they are spilling proteins in the urine, then they start doing a 24-hour urine just to see just how much protein they're actually losing in their urine that their body is not retaining. And then just like we talked about with the ATTR, they also do blood tests. They also do the biopsy of the kidney to see what they're dealing with. And they have to do all that to determine an exact diagnosis. Now, the same test that they did with the Congo red staining and all of that, they do the same type of staining and everything with the non-TTR. That's how they find out just exactly how much damage has been done and what the outlook is as far as treatment. Now, while they go through treatment for this, some of the tests are going to have to be repeated. This is how they monitor to see how far it's progressed and how well a person is responding to therapy. Now, this particular type of the non-TTR, they recommend genomic sequencing. That means they're going to take blood from you and they're going to look at the DNA. And they're going to break down that DNA to see where the genetic mutation is taking place. And they can do that through your blood and find out exactly what type that you have. But in order to identify what kind of protein deposits and all of that you have that are building up, that your body's not clearing, they need to be able to do biopsies as well to figure out about the deposits and exactly what they're made of. Now, this isn't a very pleasant subject, but it has been one of the things that they have found as far as a treatment for this particular type of non-TTR amyloidosis. And it's a tough pill to swallow because we're talking about transplant. But they have found that either a heart transplant, if the heart's involved, or kidney transplant, if the kidney's involved, can slow the progression for a period of time, can improve quality of life for a period of time, and can prolong life. But the problem is, if you're still making those proteins, they're going to cause an issue later on. There has to be a way to turn that gene off. And they found a way to turn it off, but I don't like the way they found to turn it off because it involves an RNA vaccine, which I think was the precursor to them looking for a coronavirus vaccine. I can't really promote changing your DNA, but that's the way they're looking at treating this. There are not as many treatment options that are available for non-TTR familial amyloidosis because it's considered a rarer type. It's not as common. So more often than not, you're going to hear a lot more about supportive measures than anything else. And in a lot of cases, if things are too far progressed, then supportive measures only are what you're going to hear recommended. One thing that we've learned about this familial type of amyloidosis, either ATTR or non-TTR, the earlier that you identify the problem, the better off you're going to be because they can stop the misfolding of the proteins that causes these deposits in these organs and make them where they don't function properly. So the main thing that you need to do is understand about the genetic testing that you go through to help know if your family has this type of amyloidosis as a problem. And the best way to understand all about the genetic testing and the different gene mutations and all of the different assays that they can do to determine the type and the course is to go to the link that I've provided for you here from the Amyloidosis Foundation. It actually has a bunch of questions about the genetic testing and what you have to expect from genetic testing and the treatments that they have available. It goes into that in detail. I don't really want to go into that depth here because that would be more geared for a healthcare provider presentation versus one for public understanding, and because it goes into so much depth. So with this link that I have here, the facts page, you can find out any information that you would like to know about getting tested for the familial type and find out if your family has either the ATTR or the non-TTR, because they are both familial types. It's just one makes TTR and one does not. In closing, I just want to thank you for being here. I want you to remember to like and subscribe. If you've learned something from the video, this lets me know that I am covering it in a manner that y'all are gaining understanding. And your support of my work is very much appreciated with your being here. Please share the content if you know of anybody that has any of the type problems that we've mentioned here, so they can get any genetic testing or anything done that they may need to get done in order to have a better understanding of this particular type of amyloidosis. The genetic testing is needed for them to be able to identify the problems and the organs affected. Special thanks goes to the Amyloidosis Foundation because they have immense amount of information on all of the different types of amyloidosis, and they have some very interesting pictures that I insert into the content whenever I can to help with the understanding of the problem. But this particular type is just not as common. And the next type that we will be going into is called the wild type. So be looking for that either later this week or on the weekend. Thank you so much for your prayers because my carpal tunnel has calmed down a bit. It's not nearly as bad as what it once was, and I'm very thankful for that. So I will hope to get the wild type out to you either later this week or over the weekend, so you will have it for you next week whenever you get around to watching it. I also want to give you, in closing, an insight on a video that I ran across from a master herbalist. And he is from the Caribbean. He's kind of difficult to understand, but his name is Patrick Delves. And if you have an opportunity to go to his website, he talks a lot about the own personal treatments that he uses, the herbs and everything that he uses to help fight COVID. So if you have an opportunity, please visit his website. His name is Patrick Delves. I will provide you with the information because I want you to see the content that he has on how he fights COVID with different herbs and spices in a way to raise your own body's immune system and in fight against the virus. Y'all have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk soon. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.